Good morning. It is Sunday, and not just any Sunday. It is the Sunday of Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King weekend. Yeah, we have Martin Luther King Boulevard, but that's not who the weekend is named after. Uh, and I think it's important to know that this is also a day you're supposed to be doing a day of service. That is probably the best way you could possibly celebrate that thing. Not go out and buy a new mattress, not go out and buy and get new Kia because they are on sale at the Martin Luther King Day sale, but to actually do something. And that means if you see something, do something. If you have a legislature you can talk to them because they need to hear from you because you have to realize they're getting just as much disinformation as you are on Facebook. They have coming into their office. So talk to your legislator, do something, do a day of service, and let's talk about that and other things on the rotation. Oh, and yes, veterans, I am now drinking Black Rifle coffee. I am being patriotic. I'm standing by you. I get so many things on Facebook say you can't talk about veterans because you're not a veteran. No, my entire family were veterans. So
you could also be like a fan of Joe Rogan and drink that coffee. I think.
Does that work?
Isn't that his coffee? Isn't
Black Rifle is Joe Rogan's coffee?
I don't know if it's his, but he definitely promotes the shit out of it.
Doesn't he also promote protein powder too?
He promotes He promotes aliens were built the pyramids in Peru instead of Latinos. He promotes a bunch of shit that's dumb.
Okay, well, illegal aliens can't come from Mars anymore. We have to deport them back. But we have to get on with this. My name is Gary Stein. I am the political and policy director here.
Oh, it's not working.
Yeah, that works for me. I don't know. You're the technical guy, but that works just fine.
There we go. It wasn't working for a second, but I got it to work. That sounds like crap, though. That sounds like static. It sounds good in my headphones. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Technical things aside, because we are semi-professional here. Mm-hmm. To my right, we have our deputy director, our master of business administration and proprietor of Chillum CBD and Mushroom Dispensary, the only mushroom dispensary here in the state of Florida, legally. Carlos Jose Angel Armida. Carlos, how you doing today over in Ybor City?
I'm good. It's a gloomy day out here, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, when the world gets winter, especially Minnesota, like last night it was 7 below. We have a cold spell. We got down to 50 last night, and people were panicking. They're running around throwing sweatshirts on all the plants outside to make sure they don't freeze, which is kind of nice.
My roommate puts blankets on top of our. What?
Oh, okay. And
freeze?
No, I did. Did you freeze? No,
I did.
Okay. Anyways, we have a very special guest today because one of the topics we're constantly going back to is that when people go into dispensaries and they talk to their bud tenders, they usually get this deer in the headlights look, especially if you give them a really hard question like, what do you have for migraines? Mm-hmm. That will really throw them off. So that's one of the questions I usually ask the people behind the counter when I go in, besides the fact that, what is the terpene profile for this? And then I ask them for the COA to see if they're actually right. Because it's important to have somebody behind the counter that actually knows what they're talking about and not just telling you, yeah, I'm sorry you have migraines, but this will get you high, which is not exactly what you want to hear from people. So how do we fix that? Well, obviously, we're talking about education. But how can that be done? And that is one of the reasons that I brought on this young lady here today, who's from my hometown, which makes my my heart beat a bit right here. I'd like to welcome Angie Roullier, if I pronounced that correctly, who put out a wonderful piece called "The Budtender's Blueprint," which is basically a budtender's Bible on what they should know before they walk up to the counter, and other things. Angie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. And I got to say, I don't feel bad for you guys at all at 50 degrees. I woke up this morning and it was -2. So we would be glad to have your 50 degrees.
I have too. That's not bad.
I
I mean,
stopped.
obviously my blood has gotten much thinner because I went to take the garbage out the other night and it was actually down to about 38.
Mhm.
And I came in with chilblains. I could not believe that because I went to Michigan State University. I used to have to walk to class in a foot of snow. And by the time I got to class, the scarf over my face was frozen over because of the condensed breath on the cloth. But now I can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I gotta ask, guys, before we get into like the wonders of bud tending and everything, but let's just talk about the difference between smoking weed in Florida and smoking weed in Michigan, right? When I was younger, right, and I wanted to go smoke pot, I didn't have parents that supported my marijuana habit, so I had to leave my house, right? Which typically meant that I had to walk. I had to walk into the woods, right? I smoked by lakes. I smoked in swamps. I smoked everywhere in South Florida, right? Smoked by the beach, things like that. But I couldn't smoke in my house, right? I'd imagine if it was -2, I would not want to do that. So, like, when you guys were growing up, right? Assuming you guys were smoking weed growing up, right? Where did you have to go?
I went outside. You froze your ass off.
You
And
smoked weed with freezing your ass off?
yeah, there's got to be some science behind it. And I don't know if you went through the same thing, Gary. But you go outside and you smoke a joint, and then the minute you come back in the house and you warm up, all of a sudden you're just like blown out. Like you're higher than you would have been if you would have smoked a joint in the living room.
absolutely, it's like your body was on hold while you were out there until you were able to thaw out.
For sure.
But let's talk about what when I was growing up, the first ounce that I bought was $16.
Wow.
And the guy who sold it to me, I asked him, "Oh, what kind is this?" He said, "It's brown." Naturally, he meant Mexican brown, so I get that later on. But at the time, I thought that was just absolutely hilarious. It's like you get a choice of what he has and what he can give you,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much it. And this last time I went to Detroit, I actually bought a $15 ounce.
Oh.
And I can tell you it was one hell of a lot better than the Mexican brown that I smoked in 1974.
Yeah.
It, so things have changed, yet they haven't. How is Michigan able to uphold those kind of prices? I'll grant you that was probably outdoor flower,
Yeah.
and it may have been at least 8 to 9 months past harvest.
Yeah.
So it's
The
been
harvest
quote
date's
unquote curing all that time.
Yeah. No, yeah, the harvest date is an issue around here. The market's flooded. That's all there is to it. I'm a big fan of outdoor sun grown. I believe weed should be grown outside the way God intended it. There is a difference for me in the taste. And I'm sure the plant science guys can get into, how the terpenes develop differently, whether it's grown indoor under artificial light or whether it's grown outdoor. But we've got a hugely flooded market. And there's a lot to choose from, and it can get completely overwhelming even when you do know what you're looking for. There is a lot out there, and as you probably saw when you were here in Michigan, there's the pre-pack and there's still the deli style where you can stick your nose in the jar and smell what you want to smell and make your choices based upon that way. Or like I said, they got the pre-packed that comes in like cat food tins. You really don't know what you're getting until you get it home and grind it up. And so yeah, we've definitely got A to Z up here in Michigan.
Well, deli style is one of my favorite things to enjoy. Even if I'm not going to buy anything that day, I will just go in there and just ask them to pull down at least 10 or 15 different jars, so
Oh,
I
you're
can
that
just sit
guy.
there and inhale all the terpene profiles that are out there. Everything from garlic butter to Luke Skywalker, you name it.
Mhm.
And then I start telling them what terpenes they have in there, because usually they can't tell me automatically by sniffing it. They got to look at the little tag in the back.
Yeah.
But it but it is really kind of cool to be able to tell the freshness of a product before you can buy it. Here in Florida, everything has to be totally sealed when you buy it. There's
Okay.
nothing you can smell, or in some cases you can't even look at the bud.
Mm.
they used to have those nice little things with the magnifying glass on top, and you can look at it and you say, "Oh, your trichomes are brown. Don't you think you should change out your display?"
Yeah, that's for sure it, because it will sit there for months on end. Um, and it's hard to educate people on the terpenes when they can't smell it. Um, because I always used to, ask, do you want the funky or do you want the fruity? And, you give them two really good different examples, and it kind of opens their head up into, it's more than just weed. There's actually something behind it. It's not just that one option we got when we were kids. You got the ditch weed, or, you got, once a year we got what was called Christmas weed. And for whatever reason, it was probably because the harvest was over and it was finally done curing, that was just the best shit you were going to get all year round. So I'm a fan of deli myself, just for educational purposes.
And it works out quite well. But I want to get into what made you decide to go ahead and educate bud tenders of all the wonderful options in the world for what you can do with your life. And you were already successful in real estate over in Michigan. What made you decide to go ahead and change your mind and go in this path?
Well, I got into cannabis due to health conditions, and found it greatly improved my quality of life. And all of a sudden, I just wanted to shout it from the rooftops, learn as much as I possibly could about it, and see who else it could help. So when I did get into the cannabis industry, I got into the retail side. I can't grow a damn thing. I can kill a cactus, and I have. So I have no business actually physically touching the plant. So I knew that was not the route to go. And being a realtor for almost 20 years, I'm decent with people, and, getting really personal really fast, because you have to in both industries. And I had found that most bud tenders, you're doing it wrong. And in some cases, you're actually causing more harm than you are helping. So it was really important to me to get my, 10, 12 years of experience working behind the cannabis counter and getting it out there, not only to the layman, but to the bud tenders. It can be done in the right way, to where, yes, you can make the sale, and yes, they can learn something about cannabis, and yes, you can help people with this plant.
I mean, Carlos and I met because he had a very unusual job at that point in time, and I was looking to do some lobbying and find somebody to lobby for. And I saw that there was a Tampa Cannabis Institute or school or whatever. And I said, "Is there really one?" Because we didn't have an actual law yet. This is before everything opened up. It was just getting ready to open up. And I saw that there was actually somebody who was actually trying to teach people about cannabis so they could start their own business, which was lovely because as it ended up, none of them had a chance in hell of starting their own business because of the fact you had to be a millionaire. You had to have at least a $5 million performance bond. And I don't think that the students at that school had a $5 million performance bond or had a cultivation that had been a farm for the last 30 years, which was the entrance thing. Carlos, how did you get involved in that?
Well, I was working out in San Jose as a bud tender. I was doing so not necessarily to like pay bills or anything like that, but essentially to research when, because I was going to the cannabis industry. I was probably the only bud tender in San Jose that had just graduated with his MBA. So I really was just trying to learn the business and trying to see what was going on out there. And, I was trying to rise in ranks through up in the business out there. I was looking to get into management as opposed to just, $7 an hour at the time, bud tending. And I noticed a job listing for a school in Tampa, and I had spoken situation. I even kind of worked as a waiter when I first started at that school just to make sure that I could pay my bills. But I mean, the I shouldn't say his name, I guess, but the person who started that school did have shady intentions. I'm not even gonna lie. I was a victim of his. He stole a bunch of money from me and a bunch of people that work for that school. But the intention he had when he first opened the school was not necessarily to open your own cannabis business, but it was to work for his cannabis business that he was going to open when he got the license in Florida. And it changed over time. He learned that he couldn't have a vocational school so easily open. But I had developed in that program courses on how to grow cannabis, how to manage a dispensary, how to be a bud tender, things like that. And I ended up taking that. I did meet Gary as I was working for Medical Marijuana Tampa, but I did end up leaving that school and going somewhere else and teaching more reputable cannabis classes for other people, like Cannabis Career Institute and Florida Cannabis Coalition.
Well, you were introduced to me as Professor Hermida.
Professor Hermida. Oh God, I hated that. I hated that so much. Professor of cannabis. What a marketing tool.
I was just like saying, where's your certificate?
And I was kind of telling people too, I was like, guys, come on. Like, I just graduated with a graduate degree. I can understand how disrespectful the term professor of cannabis is. Like, let's not call me that. And it's still, people liked it for some reason.
And you were a graduate of Oaksterdam, right?
Yeah, I graduated.
And I didn't see that. However, it was really actually still a precarious thing for you to do because there were arrests made at that location, or at least inspections. And you had a nice little thing. You were giving people a little idea as to what to do when the police come, which is an odd thing to do at a school.
There were no arrests at that at Medical Marijuana Tampa. There was a situation where we were like doing improvements on the building, and the fire marshal came in and he saw that there was a cannabis school that was growing tomato plants. So he called the cops on our tomato plants, and there was like, wasn't even like a raid. Like, some cops showed up here and they're like, hi. I ended up showing them the tomato plants, and they got really fucking pissed at the fire marshal for not knowing what kind of plants were what and wasting their time. But there were no arrests made at Medical Marijuana Tampa. They should have arrested the owner, but I think he got away scot-free.
It is a shame. I mean, I'll grant you, there were pepper plants too, right? We're not just tomatoes. And of course, the only thing that they had in common with the actual plant we were talking about was they both happen to have terpenes.
Well, you can clone a pepper plant very similar to a cannabis plant.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Have you smoked a pepper lately?
I have not smoked a pepper. I have dried a pepper lately.
I can tell you they're very hard to put into a grinder.
Not into paprika? No, Angie, we're messing around and stuff, but to get actually bud tended before. I'm sure it's very different now. And Gary was kind enough to send me a digital copy of your book. And I was able to flip through it. It's very interesting. You're doing a great job. I think Gary, what happens in a dispensary is very personable for people like Gary. First off, a guy like Gary over here, he's a bit of a cannabis nerd, if you will. And second, we're not mentioning that his wife does have a condition that oh shit, I'm dealing with this new webcam. His wife does have a condition. Gary does want to medicate for the right reasons, and what happens in a dispensary is very important to Gary. And he is a big advocate calling for this bud tender education thing.
Yeah.
And then I also, having been a bud tender, I'm also a business owner, and I can also kind of understand how difficult it is to train a staff on something so complex as cannabis. And not to mention, one part that I definitely liked about your book is that you went into cannabis and then you went into the importance of understanding people.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the most complex things about recommending cannabis towards people, is that everybody's different and everybody can react to the same strain kind of differently. Right.
Yeah.
So one question that I definitely have is like, I promise you, from what I've read from your book, and I promise the people listening, the people watching, that a good way to get educated on bud tending is to check out your book. What is a good way though to train a staff of people, like at that mass of people, right? Like how bud tenders to absorb the information that's in your book?
Yeah, so it's hard, and it sounds crazy, but the science is the easy part, because you know what I mean. It doesn't change, it doesn't fluctuate. The science of the plant is the science in the plant. It's getting people to give a shit that you struggle with. You got to find out.
That goes into my next question too, because I go and I start talking to customers about terpenes, right? God forbid I ever start talking about flavonoids.
Yes,
and their brain like shuts off, right? It's too complex, right? So there's another aspect to that where, like, you have to teach your staff all this important information, and then your staff has to relay all this important information to people that don't necessarily even want to know it.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I was a big fan of tricking people into learning. So somebody comes in and they're looking for a zinger. They're looking for something uplifting. They stick their nose in the jar and they know that they like the lemon smell as opposed to the pine. Well, as you're packing it up, you can get into how beta pining is a bronchodilator, and it's a lot like forest bathing, and it's going to open up your lungs. And you do this just kind of nonchalantly running at the mouth while you're packing up their order. They have now left learning something that they didn't know when they walked in the door, as opposed to like preaching at them, because you're right, people will do the shutdown. A lot of people just want to get in and get out. So you got to find these little windows on how to educate them, on the plant itself and, its effects. It depends on what you're in there for. Like Gary had said, about migraines. When people come in with a medical condition, well, you kind of got to dig a little and say, well, what causes your migraines? Like, are you uber stressed? Is it hereditary? Do you not sleep at night? Generally, there's something that triggers those migraines. And for me, I believe that's the root of the problem. And that's what cannabis should be used for, to address.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, seriously, people do have serious medical conditions. And although they have spoken to their doctor about it when they got their card, sometimes it may have been months or even years ago where they had really had a good, deep conversation with their doctor. Not always. Some of them are very good about it. Some of them are more about, you can get your card online by having a nice little telehealth visit that you get all of 15 minutes for. And that's about it. So when you go to the counter, if you were trying to get something out of the legitimate medical business, like at a pharmacy, and talk to a pharmacist, he'll tell you exactly what medicine you're taking and how to take it, what the side effects are, things of that sort. You go to a bud tender and you say, like Carlos had said, I have a wife who's got severe glaucoma. Something you recommended to me has 0 CBG and 0 CBN in it. Mm-hmm. How is this supposed to help her? And watch them start to sweat.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and there's a responsibility in what comes out of your mouth as a bud tender. And that's one of the things that I teach, because I'm a big fan of saying, I don't know, but I'll find out. You know what I mean? As opposed to just giving false information just so you can get the sale, because there is a lot of pressure coming from, the higher ups to, what do you mean that person left without buying anything? Now all of a sudden the bud tender is the asshole, to where they're just trying to protect the person that they couldn't help. So I try and teach the bud tenders to, stand up for yourself, but also there's absolutely no shame in saying, I don't know, or, hey, let's look into it together, pull out the iPad, you know what I mean? See what the research, kind of dabbles in, and, let them know, this is what we have found out together. And it makes not only the consumer, but, the bud tender, they're in it together. The consumer doesn't feel like they're being told this is what you do. They're a part of their own solution.
I was in Waterford. I was talking to a lovely lady at this location called, I think it was called Levels.
Mhm.
And she mentioned the fact that, the previous week she was a real estate agent, and now she's counter staff. So I think it's kind of a short time to put people in front of folks, but I guess you sometimes you have to make certain you fill that space.
Mhm.
You don't leave the counter blank at any point in time, and it does help if they go ahead and ask somebody else. But if they're trying to promote themselves as well as promote the sale, and unfortunately build the sale, which I think is antithetical to dealing with medical cannabis,
Yeah. Yeah.
that makes an issue. And then she brought me a product. I looked at it and I said, "This is nice, but this harvest date is a year ago."
Yeah.
With all due respect, why is this even on the shelf? And she said, "I didn't know. I didn't even look at that before."
Yeah. Because they're it's so ingrained in them from, it's not the education on the terpenes and the cannabinoids and stuff like that. It's how to sell. And I've been in places where, they're like, we've got too much of this. This is what you're pushing today. It's not necessarily what's best for the individual that's standing in front of you. So the hard sell is, I really have a hard time with it. I had a bud tender come back when I was managing a shop, and she was giddy as shit that she just got a $3,000 sale. And this was a shop that didn't actually reward you, for being the highest seller that day or that week. And I said, my gosh, Caitlin, I said, what did they buy that, they spent $3,000 on? And she said, oh, it was all RSO. I instantly got pissed. I'm like, how dare you be happy about somebody dropping $3,000 on RSO when they're pretty much trying to fight cancer? They're trying to save their own ass at this point. It is absolutely nothing to be proud of. And I I really got after her for it. And after the fact, I realized I could have approached it a little bit differently. But I tell you what, the next time that person came in and dropped another $3,000, she absolutely treated, the situation with the respect that it deserved.
And by the way, I know Rick Simpson watches this show on a regular basis. Not really, but I am trying to get him on the show because I wanted to discuss with him his opinion on how people are treating the whole idea of what RSO is.
Mhm.
And oftentimes the label is put on a little bit too liberally.
Oh, no, for sure. Because it's actually, it's fully extracted cannabis oil. RSO is the name of a person. FICO is the name of a product and an extraction method.
Because I did walk into some place and asked for some Phoenix Tears, and they said, no, we got something called Grandma's Breath. I think it's close.
Oh. No, not even a little bit.
We're not going to get into
Angie. In my store, granted, there's a difference between hemp and cannabis or whatnot, but in order to train our employees, we have a pretty extensive process. There's actually 4 multiple choice tests that I give the people we're training before they can actually hop onto the floor, and sometimes it doesn't even seem to be enough. I'm wondering, and honestly, with what you guys were talking about just now, I'm wondering what a training program should look like for a dispensary, and I'm also wondering, like, would it be worthwhile to put like some sort of like ethics training in there as well?
Yeah.
What do you think?
All day. So here in Michigan, the day before we went recreational, we had almost 400,000 registered patients and caregivers for the medical. Today, we have less than 30,000. Okay. These people just didn't stop using weed. These people just didn't just disappear. They just didn't want to be on that list. Now that it was, adult use and they can just waltz right in. But it almost seemed like they forgot that these people, majority of them, I would say 1 in 3, are there for medical reasons. So therefore, like you said, the ethics, the compassion, the empathy does have to be trained. And again, trying to train people to give a shit is a really, really hard job. So it's a lot of examples. As a trainer, and I suppose it helped because I was managing the joint. I was always listening, to the conversations that the bud tenders were having behind the counter. And, if I thought that they could do something better, or, for the love of God, don't ever say that to another human again, situations, I would snag them up and take them in the back and be like, listen, this is what you said. This is what you should have said. But in the same turn, people can be jerks, especially if they don't feel good. So I also train the bud tenders, where that line in the sand is, when to, okay, this person is just being mean, as opposed to, they're just pangry, they're just in a lot of pain. So I'd like to think that the bud tenders blueprint does both of those.
Yeah, somebody just brought up a very interesting point, because home grow is a big contentious thing over here in Florida. That we'd love to have it. The legislature has no intention of giving it to us because they're so concerned about what they call diversion to the gray market, which means basically people are going to be growing things in their garage and they're passing them out to the neighbors. Like welcome to the neighborhood. Here's an eighth kind of thing. But that doesn't really happen. Michigan has a decent home grow policy. You got 6 flowering plants per person. Is that correct? Or is it 12 now?
So just recreational, it's 12 per household, but we still have our medical caregiver. So if I'm a patient myself and a caregiver to 5 patients, I can grow 72 plants legally.
And it helps to know what you're doing. I'll grant you one thing that Carlos was doing with his group, although I think it was the original intention of the owner, was to actually educate people on proper cultivation, because home grow is not as easy as it sounds. You can't just throw your whatever seed you got from wherever into whatever ground and just expect you're going to have a medicinal quality product.
No,
And that's
you've got mold, and it's a bioaccumulator. I mean, its job is to suck the toxins out of the ground, along with sunflowers and mustard. And if you've got it in some bullshit dirt, you're soaking up all of those heavy metals and all of that other stuff, and now you're going to try and pass it off as medicine.
Or if you're 3 miles away from the Fermi plant near Detroit, where the ground is still glowing from those days when we almost lost Detroit back in 1972, I think it was, when they nearly had a meltdown there.
Yeah, Zug Island. Yeah.
And that's what we have to deal with. And so we'd love to have people to educate folks on how to grow before they start growing, or an option of having possibly co-ops where someone actually helps them grow, as opposed to just doing it on their own. And that's basically one of the things I'm hoping to do. But that's going to take a lot of education, not only of the consumer, but also of the politicians, and get them to understand that. But we'd really love to have home grow. But let's talk about for a moment what's been going on with regards to the conversion from a fully medical program to an adult use program, as you call it, recreational, which is fine. And I find it to be difficult because the fact, like in states like Oregon, Washington, when they did go adult use, all of a sudden the medical program started shrinking away. I went by, and I was there in 2019 in Detroit, and I had to have a medical card to walk in the room, and they had great prices. Like that sort. 5 years later, I was looking for a store that even wanted me to see my medical card, or that could give me a discount for my medical card. What has happened to the medical program?
Yeah. In my opinion, I think we just got into adult use way too quick. I mean, it was something like a little bit over a year later. Once we opened up, medical, out in the sunlight, and then, all of a sudden, recreational showed up. Again, I equate that to greed. But we did have to where you actually had to own a medical shop for 2 years before they would even consider granting you an adult use license. So it got a lot of people into it, not for medical reasons. They were in it just as a means to an end to get their recreational. And you see a lot of garbage out there now. I was a big fan of medical. That's where I started. I mean, I've been doing this almost 16 years. And it was, a lot of, RSO, it was a lot of tinctures, it was a lot of topicals, it was good, clean, you know, solid flour. And like you said, now, you've got pre-rolls that have been sitting on the shelf a year and a half. How is that medicine? I mean, the terpenes are pretty much already gone. It's been degraded to such a point that, you're pretty much just smoking dust. So I don't know. I go back and forth because we're blessed to have access. We really are. For anybody over the age of 21. So I really hate to poo-poo on it too much. But there is a lot of crap out there, and it can be extremely overwhelming for the Budtender first. There's no way you're going to learn all the products. It's just not going to happen. But out of 70 different types of gummies, you might have 3 that are actually whole plant, or have some other minor cannabinoids in it that you can find to actually be helpful. They're not all made from isolate and distillate.
Well, I noticed that a lot of products have become what they call multimedia products. or basically infused in anything they could possibly find.
Yeah.
Like they will take flour and they will spray terpenes on it,
Yeah.
or they'll and call it an infused pre-roll, or they will dip it in oil and they'll wrap it in TCA flour,
Yeah.
THCA flour, and call it infused. And it's getting farther and farther away from the original terpene and cannabinoid profile of the plant. And I guess that is fine for an adult use market. I mean, here in Florida, we had a situation where we had at least more than one dispensary, we call MMTCs, or Medical Marijuana Treatment Center over here, that basically sold what I call hot dog water, which is basically creating carts by creating the terpene profile, throwing in a bunch of isolates of THC and CBD and possibly nothing else, and calling it Gainesville Green, which is a cultivar which disappeared at least 30 years ago, but they're claiming they know exactly what it is.
It's not that, I can tell you that. It's from 30 years ago. It is absolutely not that. No, and there is a lot of crap out there. There really is. I walked into a shop and I saw a jar full of buds, and they were sprayed like it was a little kid's cereal. And they had actually sprayed the outside of the buds with THCA. And I'm like, that's disgusting. I am absolutely not going to smoke that. But somewhere, somehow, it got into people's heads that the higher the THC percentage, the better. And that's absolutely not the truth. I had 12, 15%ers sit my ass down. And then I've had 35%ers that gave me nothing but a headache. So again, it comes back to the education, and higher isn't always better.
And yet they sell the THCA number as the number one thing. You've got 4, based on whatever dispensary you go to, it seems like there's 4 levels of flower you can get. You got the smoking stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is your outdoor grows and your things that are supposed to be lower. Then you've got fire, then lit, and then the other one I don't understand is Zaza. Explain Zaza to me, because I never heard that term before. I didn't go to the Zaza dispensary, which is a lovely dispensary, and it's excellent because of the fact that they support a minority community.
Okay. Yeah, which is
that's something you have over there is social equity. We don't have social equity here in Florida. We have a oligopoly with on the Canadian Stock Exchange that sells a lot of booth and is spending $52 million right now to get a recreational program here in Florida. So it shows you where they're going. I'm not going to say who it is, Trulieve, but but which is an organization that really did help our medical program get off the ground in the state of Florida. In part, it was through some political subterfuge, and I give them credit for using the tools they had at their disposal. They actually got flour in our hands prior to there being illegal flour by shoving moldy older bud into ceramic cartridges and calling them what do they call them? We used to call them white walnuts because they were little ceramic things you could break open and take the flour out and smoke it, but you're supposed to put it into a volcano for vaping, essentially.
Oh my goodness. No,
so
never.
That's how they got around being able to sell whole flower. They basically said, "No, this is actually just for vaping, and you can't
But
don't
let
ever
me
break
tell
these
you
things open and take the flower
something.
out. Don't ever do that."
Let me tell you something. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, but that was actually a great time if you were a dabber. Like if you dabbed, that was like an amazing time because like these concentrates were going out, right? And they didn't have now they have the system that makes sure that you can't go past your allotment or anything. It used to be free range. You used to just be able to go and buy as many dabs as you want. But once they figured out the smokable flower thing, they started fucking with us dabbers.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. So we have a 2.5 ounce flower cap per purchase. Supposedly it's no more than 10 ounces in a month. But we've tested the theory and gone to like different pot shops, and we've definitely busted that limit. They're they're not, but like you were saying, back to the concentrates. I mean, back in the day, it was a 2.5 ounce limit or cap on concentrates. Okay, that's a shit ton of concentrates.
Yeah.
Okay, we would have
That
people.
sounds like Carlos's breakfast, to be honest with you.
I had that this morning.
Well, good for you being able to function.
Carlos has a bit of higher tolerance than most people. Although he does not tolerate putting salami into a Cuban sandwich. We're going to get into that later.
I'm on 200 milligrams of Fico right now.
Oh,
So I actually have some questions. I'm sorry that like my internet got fucked up and
No.
it's a fucking gloomy ass day out here. I wish my camera was able to like check out outside right now, but anyways, I have some questions if you guys don't mind, if just on weed itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. First off, let's start this line of questioning with what the fuck is a flavonoid, anyways?
What's a what?
Flavonoid.
Oh, so flavonoids it's got nothing to do with flavor. Thank you, science, for making it confusing. So I like to explain it to people, especially here in Michigan, because we have so many fall colors that change. So when the cooler weather comes along, it's the flavonoid anthocyanin. The colder weather actually breaks it down, and it allows those colors to shine through. And so a lot of people will put stock into purple flower and like it's the cat's pajamas because it's purple.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's got to have a genetic predisposition for that flavonoid, and then the purple comes out at the end of harvest when the cooler temperatures come around if you're growing outdoors.
Okay, so I have a new question. I noticed you had a bold move when it comes to us cannabis nerds to have a dangers. I forget how you worded it. It's like a bad side of cannabis, dangers of cannabis.
The negative side effects.
Negative side of cannabis, right? And I glanced at it, and I don't have any like major quarrels here. So I definitely think it's important that we take a real look at cannabis, both the negative and the positive. You had a section in there about cannabis allergies, and I was wondering if you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So every now and again, you come across somebody, I'm allergic. It makes me sneeze, it makes me itch, makes me break out in hives, that kind of thing. The research that I did do on it, it all comes down to pinene. So think of like the yellow bullshit that falls from the trees in the spring that gets people's seasonal allergies going. The same terpene is, found in cannabis. So I really try and get people to pay attention to like their own allergies. And, if you're allergic to it out in the world in nature, I'm not really sure you want to pack a bowl with it and set it on fire and inhale it, because you are probably going to have the exact same reaction.
I had somebody I came across that said that they were allergic to indicas. And I was like, that's interesting. And I was like, and then I remembered that they had also allergic to mangoes, and they had like allergic reactions to lemongrass. And I was like, damn, you might be allergic to myrcene.
Ding, ding, ding. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, so it comes down to that, and it's crazy because, I try and tell people, I'm like, let's say you're allergic to dairy. you're going way out of your way to check every single label at the grocery store to make sure you're not going to do yourself in. So, the same kind of personal responsibility has to come with cannabis. I'm a big fan of the layman over-educating themselves before they walk into a pot shop, to know their allergies, to know, basically what they want to use cannabis for, just in case your bud tender doesn't know shit.
So in the same section that you had, sorry, Gary, in the same section that you had negatives, that you had allergy, the negative section, right? You had something that goes into with what a lot of headlines are dealing with right now. You didn't call it scromiting, but you definitely had a section on CHS. I just wanted to, maybe you can go into CHS, what it is, how bad it could be, things like that. Have you ever scromited before?
I have not. I have definitely greened out before, but there was no scromming. So it's fairly new. And, a lot of people will argue it's from the product being sprayed with pesticides. But the problem is, pesticide poisoning doesn't give those side effects. So from where the science is at now, my understanding is it's a genetic predisposition. It isn't only THC. It can include CBN and CBD and CBG. And it is, overdoing it and chronic use. And especially if you were younger and you were a chronic user, and let's say you quit for 10 years and then you picked it up again, running like a freight train, it could really pop back in. Cody Pearson, he is a doctor who really, really specializes in CHS. So I would definitely, look to him for more knowledge. And one of the problems with the CHS is, people will take themselves to the emergency room and they're being misdiagnosed. So therefore they're not, being treated the way that they should be treated. They just write it off to, oh, they're a pothead and they overdid it. Yeah. So this is something that definitely needs a lot more science behind it, a lot more research.
We had Dr. Joseph Rosado on last week, and was it?
Yeah, it was last week.
It was last week. And we dedicated the whole episode to scromiting. And that's what he said, that there's chronic vomiting syndrome is often diagnosed as CHS when the doctor has a bias. If the doctor just hates marijuana, he got beat up by potheads like 5 years ago or some shit.
Yeah.
And he's like, God damn potheads, I'm gonna take away your weed.
Right.
And it's interesting too, because like a lot of times these doctors would be like, you stay away from marijuana, but you may also want to stay away from vinegar and tomatoes and
a damn tomato.
I think we also need to concern ourselves with the prevalence of a side effect. I mean, there are medications you can take every single day that you will look at the list of side effects and you will be astounded as to what things could possibly happen to you.
Oh, for sure.
And yet they actually have to put down, there's a threshold. They have to put down a side effect if it happens in 1 in 100,000 patients based on the severity. So should people actually be worried about the possibility of a cannabis hyperemesis situation, or how often does it actually happen?
Well, and it's hard to say because it's being misdiagnosed. You know what I mean? If these doctors are being truthful and they actually knew something about cannabis, I bet you the numbers, it might be a little bit higher. So you hate to put out the warning bell. I believe everybody should be aware that this is out there and that this does happen to people. But I don't think it happens as often as, people think it is.
Well, I said a couple of shows ago, I did a dab the other day, and then I sneezed after I did the dab, and then the combination and the dab made me fart, and I understand that to be a snort. So I'm wondering if you ever considered putting in your book that cannabis makes you snort.
I have not, but if I do, I'm totally quoting you. I might even have to write a paragraph. Yeah, you're getting all that one.
I don't know if you guys remember the Cheech and Chong movie Nice Dreams.
Oh yeah.
where the side effect was it turned that guy into a giant lizard.
Oh my God, Stacy
Ah.
Keach.
I have been looking for that strain for years. It might have some THC-L in it. I'm not certain. We're possibly looking for that possible situation. But is the medical program in Michigan going away?
You know what? There's a lot of talk saying that it's going to come back full force, especially now with this added tax. Because the tax is, my understanding, it's only applied to recreational. So, why wouldn't I go back out and get my medical card, which is good for 2 years, and save myself all of that money? And like you said, there aren't many places now that even ask for the card. When I go, I pretty much staple my card to their forehead and be like, give me my discount. You know what I mean? I am a medical patient. And most of them do comply because they don't want to look like dicks, for turning their nose up at somebody who uses it as actual medicine. So I really do. I hope the medical comes back full force, and it requires, more education behind it. Michigan doesn't have any educational requirements to work behind the counter. You have to know what THC is. You have to know what CBD is. You need to know what the word dosage means. That's about it. That's all you need to know to sling weed here in Michigan. And that was another reason that I wrote the book, is because too many of these budtenders were selling fire to Nana, who just wanted to get some sleep. And, next thing you know, she's cleaning the top of her refrigerator, falls and breaks a hip. Just because somebody, wanted to sell her, 85% THC instead of the 5 milligrams that she was looking for to go to sleep.
We had Ethan Russo on, and we were pressing him really, really hard about how much of the entourage effect is actually being utilized in the products that we see. And of course, when you're adulterating the products to make the THC higher or the terps higher, or you've got a buttload of food grade limonene you want to throw into a product so you can call it 9-pound hammer. That's not exactly the way things are supposed to work. So we're not selling products as nature intended them to be used ahead of time. That said, he was also working for GW Pharmaceuticals, and we get into another discussion about that in regards to how they're trying to segue if we ever get to Schedule 3.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
I think it might be a double-edged sword. I think it's my understanding that a Schedule 3 cannot be sold over the counter. So what does that do to all the pot shops? Are they going to have a pharmacist on staff at all times in order to get these products to the people? Which is, a possibility, but it is also given me a great argument when people come at me about my cannabis usage. And if it's going to be a Schedule 3, well, testosterone is a Schedule 3 drug. You don't see me out there judging and trying to, put my opinions on, anybody who, has to use, testosterone for their medical ability, their medical issues. So why would you do the same thing to me? So I'm kind of on the fence. I guess we'll see what happens, but I don't see the DEA really moving too fast. So I guess we'll see what comes out in the wash.
It's important to a lot of folks to know, just even if if the product that they're buying has been made from distillate and not isolate.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, I have a couple bottles, empty, of course, that I bought in Michigan of this THC syrup from a number of different dispensaries that were selling it, and they said it was distillate, but the feeling did not feel that way. It felt basically just a nano-coated distillate.
Yeah.
Isolate, rather.
Yeah, there's really no transparency in the labels. I'm a big fan of, so there's a lot of remediation going on here in Michigan because these sons of bitches can't grow weed, and they're getting it out there, but because it's so moldy and it's so gross, they just keep zapping it with radiation until it passed the tests, and then they can put it on the shelf. There's a lot of us that are fighting to put that on the labels. you should know if your joint that you're smoking on a Friday night has been zapped over and over and over again in order to pass testing. So yeah, I'm not a big fan. I think the labels can do better. And like you said, you've got the harvest date on there, you've got the testing date on there. There should absolutely be a cap. You shouldn't have stuff, hanging out on your shelves for, a year and a half.
So you're doing your best to educate the bud tender.
Mhm.
The question is, how well are are the patients being educated before they walk in, and which is more important, customer education or bud tender information, as far as
Well,
learning is concerned?
yeah, I mean, bud tending, I mean, it's your job. You know what I mean? You're being paid to know. People are coming to you for guidance. And as far as the layman goes, I mean, that's why I wrote the first book, Pot for the People, is it breaks it down in layman's terms because it's completely overwhelming. I take a lot of the same science from Pot for the People and I put it in the Bud Tender's Blueprint because it is so basic and it's written in clear English. The only difference is in the first book, I tell a lot of my stories, with my interactions with, cancer patients and dementia, veterans, things like that, just to let them know that, people are out there, real human beings are out there and they're coming into cannabis most likely as a last ditch effort. They've tried every drug, they've seen every damn doctor. They're at their wits' end. And so now they're looking to cannabis to kind of, help them where Western medicine can't. And I think the bud tender should absolutely be able to pick up the slack at that point and have a conversation with this person and not just, hey, we got to sell this shit today. Let's push these pre-rolls or, these edibles have been sitting here too long. Let's get them in their basket and out the door.
I did mention that to the lady over at Levels as to why she had put a pre-roll in my hand
Mhm.
that had a harvest date of over a year prior. And she said, I just grabbed the one that was in the front. I didn't realize that. And so I'm looking at it. I'm saying, well, either they're not rotating their stock or they have such a glut that they don't even put the new stuff out until the old stuff is sold first.
Mhm.
And that is a disservice. And yet I had a bud tender come up to me and tell me, yeah, in their training, they are told to make certain that you get the older stuff out first.
Yeah, for sure. And I've actually taught my husband. It's like shopping for milk. You know what I mean? You always reach, you know what I mean, for the back. If you want the fresher stuff. Um, I mean, it's things like this that people need to know to ask. I went into a pot shop up north, rural Michigan, and I made them dig through their pre-rolls, and still the newest one was 9 months old.
All right, so let me ask you a quick question. We're going to wrap this up pretty soon.
Mhm.
But I think there is so much to be said about the ability to trust the person you're talking to across the counter.
Yeah.
And so, what can you do to know that the person you're talking to you can trust to give you a product which is good? I mean, I love the fact that with deli style you can smell the terpene profile. When the humula hits you or when the linalool hits you or the myrcene
Yeah.
hits you, you know that you're getting a product. Because if you can smell it, you'll be able to get it. It's
Yeah.
not dead anymore.
Yeah. No, you absolutely know it's there. And as far as the trust, I always like to send people in with their first question. I mean, first it's the greeting. If a bud tender says, "What do you want?" They're just there for the sale. If they say something like, "What brings you in?" it means they're actually concerned about what brought you in that day. You know what I mean? Is it sleep? Is it just to get high? Whatever it may be. And I always tell people, I said, go in and ask them if there's any drug interactions. That will tell you how educated your bud tender is, because absolutely there are drug interactions with cannabis. And if your bud tender is, if she knows her shit or, he knows what he's talking about, he's going to say, yes, there are some drug interactions, which tells you that he's looking out for your well-being and he's educated.
Now, here in Florida, like I said, everything has to be pre-packed, vacuum sealed, white labeling only. In other words, you can't have a picture of anything on anything. I love the packaging in Michigan. Number one is the fact that it is so colorful and so creative, and some of the most beautiful packaging that I've seen. Uh, and they don't lean too heavily into somebody else's proprietal logos like they do in California, where you're constantly saying Captain Crunch's face.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make me feel like I'm going into an adult store. I'll be honest with you, when you have to deal with that. But I do see a lot of products, even in Michigan, that are vacuum sealed and a foil package, and you don't know what you're getting. And I love the fact you actually can tell what you're taking by smell. Can't always by touch. I don't want anybody else's fingerprints on my bud.
No, for sure. And we've got both. If you find something that, that's pre-packed and you ended up liking it, you're going to go back and buy it again. I don't know, maybe I'm just old school, but I do like the deli style. I like to see it. I like to smell it. I'd like to see what's going on and, what I'm getting for my money. But again, we've got everything here from A to Z, and, we're blessed to have the access we do. Now it's just a matter of learning what to do with all of that access and how to apply it.
Well, you've written 2 excellent books. I really do like the Budtender's Blueprint, because I think it's something that's desperately needed in this industry, to have somebody behind that counter that you can trust. That if you ask them if it's isolate or distillate, they'll tell you. And they'll tell you whether or not it's hot dog water or not, if they want to be honest with you. I mean, I did walk into one place and I'd say, "You got a $15 ounce here. How good is that?" And the guy started laughing. He says, "I wouldn't use the word good in the same sentence." But he pointed me to something else that was only $10 more an ounce. And the differences was amazing. And it wasn't so much the price as it was the company that was involved. And you've got some great brands in Michigan that we won't have access to because we don't have retail stores. We have vertical integration, which means you plant it, you grow it, you destroy it, you package it, and then you sell it. But where can people get your books?
So if you want to support the author, you can get it at angieroullier.com, which I believe you can see on your screen. Bookshop.org, which supports independent bookstores. They're another great one. And then if, comfortable with the necessary evil of Amazon, you can pick either of them up there as well.
And is there a B2B link for dispensaries here in Florida who actually give a damn about their customers and want to educate their budtenders and want to make certain your book gets into the hands of their employees?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm always up for a cannabis conversation. They can reach me on my website, and pretty good at, getting back to people pretty quick.
What is next in regards to legislation in Michigan? Because I'm really curious about that as like a bellwether for the recreational program in this country, as opposed to California, because they have their own issues going from county to county and things of that sort. What is happening over there right now?
So we'll see. So for example, because we border 2 states that have 0 cannabis laws whatsoever, we've got Indiana and we've got Wisconsin. So we get a lot of traffic from them. And so think of the lower west corner, going into Indiana. They're flooding over, to get their cannabis. And now some of these cities, like Niles and New Buffalo, I mean, you will find 2 or 3 pot shops sharing the same parking lot. It is that condensed, and municipalities are starting to put their foot down and they're kind of yanking back the licenses, and there's lawsuits because buildings were bought and permits were issued and, things like that. So they're really trying to slow, or across the border, purchases and, going back and forth. And then, like I said, we'll see what this 24% wholesale tax does. You can't use cannabis as a cash cow and then kind of cut the legs out from underneath it. So,
oh, you mean cannabis users are not ATMs for the state?
No, absolutely not. They like to think so. I mean, I think Michigan sold $3 billion in cannabis sales just last year. And we were actually down from the year before. So, I mean, I guess we'll see. You know, are the big guys, the MSOs, the only ones that are going to survive? And is this something that's going to kill, you know, my beloved sweet little mom and pop, you know, pot shops? I don't know. I guess we'll see where the year takes us.
Well, just the fact that you have mom and pop shops is a wonderful thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I always stop by in Monroe wherever after I pass the border coming up south from Toledo, and you'll talk to the people in line, and you'll find out a good deal of them are from Ohio, who
Hmm.
has an adult use program, but not a very good one, and
No.
Indiana and Kentucky as well. People will drive all the way up from Kentucky just to go into Michigan. So it's a destination, obviously, not a legal destination. Uh, I saw a report that came out of the last 420 of this really lovely two young ladies who are going to one of the dispensaries in Monroe, and mentioned the fact that yeah, they drove in from Ohio. And I'm
Mhm.
saying, ladies, you're on TV. You gave your name. You said where you came from, and you mentioned the fact that you went into Michigan to buy a whole bunch of things and bring it back across the border.
Yeah.
Maybe you should not be talking to to reporters.
Yeah. Well, they haven't been smoking weed as long as we have, because we know how to keep our mouth shut.
Carlos, you have any other questions for our guest?
Uh, no, pleasure meeting you.
Nice to meet you too, Carlos.
Usually, when he's only on 2 dabs, he's a lot more cooperative. But just a quick gather up is what's been going on over the last couple of weeks. I was in Tallahassee this last week talking to legislators, trying to get more of our legislative agendas going. We do now have a House companion on our bill that will prevent people from losing their parental rights if they have a medical card in the house. We think that is so important. It's a non-brainer for many other states that you shouldn't have to take somebody's kids away
Mm-mm.
because one person in the house who's not giving their kids access to the product and who needs it for medical purposes to be able to use it. And so that is moving forward now. We're hoping to get it into committee, but we need your help. Go to the site, see who is the head of the committee that's going next to. Like, for instance, in the Senate, it's going to Judiciary, and that means that Senator Clay Yarborough, who is actually interested in hearing from you, is wanting to know whether to get it in the committee, and that has to do that. So go to the normal website. There's a place where you can look at all the Florida initiatives, click on that, and send your senator and representative bills, and also make certain that the head of that particular committee gets your information so we can get these bills moving. We still want to get people with to not lose their jobs because they have been having a medical card. We want to make certain that people don't have get taken off of the transplant list because they have a medical card. That is also something that is still happening to this day because they believe that survivability goes down when you use cannabis, when it's exactly the opposite, especially when it comes to transplants and things of that sort. We're still trying to get opioid dependence as a qualifying condition so that we can get that on. And we also need to make certain that they stop banning cannabis from rehab facilities, which would help in that regard, since we are trying to get people off of opiates as opposed to on. Even though, as Carlos will tell you, we actually had a graphic we put on the other day that showed a person smoking and talked about the fact that that cannabis smoking reduces opioid dependence. And Facebook banned us for a while, saying we were not meeting community standards. Not certain what community they're talking about, but that is the world we live in. And if you want to be a qualified member to help us with this thing, by all means, join Suncoast Normal. Now we usually have a QR code that's all the way over here somewhere, someplace.
That was the last software. This software doesn't allow that.
Oh, the last software doesn't allow. Then go to suncoast.org, normal.org membership, become a member. And you'll not only get a great discount over at Chillum, of course, which is a great place to buy everything that he sells, but also you'll help us in the fight to go ahead and make certain that things go well. Unfortunately, our executive director, Chris Cano, who is still, I guess, recovering from his trip to Italy. Don't know what he was doing there, but I guess he's just our Roman Catholic. And we will see you again next week. We got a lot of great guests coming up. including the minority leader of the House here in Florida, who's going to give us the lowdown on that, and Javier Haas is coming on, the brand new CEO, the editor in chief of High Times, and moving things forward with Josh Kesselman. So stay tuned. We got a lot more to come. Take our guest today and giving us the update on Michigan and how they're doing it right, and hopefully that can spill over to Florida and all the other states where they know they need more education of their budtenders. With that, I give you a good week. Carlos,
Gary,
Angie,
I got something though.
Okay,
It's fucking hard out there right now. You notice that?
it's what out there? Hard? You mean to buy things? Oh, you're freezing again now on my side, Chris.
Hey, well, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Shit. The weather's so bad that it's like bringing down to my thing. But before my shit gets fucked up again, right? It's hard out there right now. Fucking economy is bad, right? There's no jobs. The rich are getting richer. The poor is getting poorer. And I Suncoast normal. Got to pay the rent. The baby's got to eat. $30, $25 a month or a year to, it's a year, but I don't have it, so they were like, how do I support? Oh, like, comment, share, subscribe.
Wow, that's in the new software too, right?
No, there's a lot of things that you can do to support us, right? Like, share, and subscribe, definitely, right? We have a new Instagram, right? It's at Suncoast_normal, right? That again is spelled NORML, National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. You can also subscribe to our YouTube.
I think you froze again, Chris. Carlos, at least they are on my side.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, well, actually, he looks like that after about 4 or 5 dabs, but depends on what on what he's actually using. I can tell you over here, the average wax price is between $30 and $40 a gram, which was a big difference from being able to buy Anarchy or Sticky for like $5 a piece, as you have in Michigan.
Yeah.
And of course, this being the packaging for our flour, not exactly great marketing.
No.
Nothing here that tells you what you got or what you have. But we move forward, and I appreciate everything you're doing to move the industry forward.
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate what you guys are doing. We got to keep fighting. There's always something to fight. So, and it sounds like Florida's got a lot going on, and, we need to get some evolution down there as far
We
as
now have close to 1 million registered patients here in the Florida, making it the largest medical program in the country.
wow.
I think it's even more than California had at their height of the medical program. They have 1 million registered patients. I get the fact that a lot of folks don't want to be on a registry.
Yeah.
I'm not certain how to solve that,
No.
but it's good to have protections for patients and let them know. Let budtenders know they're not just the average recreational customer.
No, for sure. And I mean, even though we have full-blown rec here in Michigan, I still hold my patient card, not only to support the caregiver market, which I wholeheartedly believe in, but as an extra layer of protection.
Absolutely. All right, Chris. Carlos, I could do that again. I don't know if you're still able to call it a day here, but he's the one who turns it off. But just so you know, we do take this conversation and we create viral videos with it. Snippets of some of the important parts of our conversation. We will be spreading those around so that everybody has to listen to the entire 1 hour and 15 minutes to hear the good stuff. Although I think there was a lot of good stuff here, and I greatly appreciate you coming on. And I love just talking about the Michigan program, not just because it's my hometown,
Yeah.
But I think it's so great that you do have areas like Hazel Park where you do got 4 or 5 or 6 decent dispensaries where you've got a decent product spread. There's some of those brands are interesting, like the Eighth by White Boy Rick. I don't know how much whether he's a brand ambassador or whether he's actually driving that, but
I believe, yeah, he's the face. Yeah.
Well, Rick, if you're listening to me, we would love to have you on the show and discuss your brand and all the things that are going on in Michigan as well. So we'll bring you on soon. And Carlos, okay, we'll work this. I would like to see more of a Michigan style dispensary here in Florida. I don't know if we go adult use, if we're going to have the kind of retail stores with multiple brands, because I think we are still stuck in the vertical.
Yeah.
And the ballot measure, if it so gets through the Supreme Court and gets on the ballot in 2026, does maintain the hold on the dispensaries strictly at the realm of the MTCs, which are all vertically integrated. And therefore, if they are, like I said, going from seed to sale over there, you're not going to get a free market with a wide variety of brands. Yes, they do contract with like MKX and things of that sort to come in and create these products, but it's still not the same. The stuff that you grow in Colorado, the stuff you grow in Oregon, is not going to grow the same in Michigan. I thought it's kind of funny that there's a great organization called Detroit Edibles out of Pinconning.
Oh, yeah.
Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Pinconning, besides a great place to buy cheese, is actually quite a few miles away from Detroit.
It is. Yeah, it's up there.
It is closer to Mackinac Island than it is to Detroit.
Yeah, and that's all they do now is cannabis and cheese.
Well,
not a bad combination, I gotta say.
I'm sorry, guys. This internet keeps on going, and the lights shut off like 4 or 5 times.
Poor Carlos is having a time, isn't he?
Are we? Did you guys hear everything? You guys just bullshit.
We're good, but we're just waiting for you to press the off button.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody, and bye.
Hang around for a second. I'll talk to you this minute.